Welcome to my walkthrough for Elden Ring's DLC, Shadow of the Erdtree. First order of business, of course, is how to enter the DLC. For anyone that's already pretty familiar with the game, there are only two requirements to enter, those being killing Radahn and killing Mohg, after which you can speak to this NPC here, then interact with the withered arm in front of us, and you'll be on your way. For those of you who have no idea where I'm standing right now or what anything I just said means, let's talk about it. Elden Ring's DLC is extremely challenging, and it's definitely meant to be tackled with an endgame character, which means I would highly recommend playing through the entirety of the base game before trying to tackle the DLC. That way you'll have all your weapons upgraded, your character's stats will be in a nice place, and you'll have all the tools available to you that you might need or want for the upcoming fights. Do you have to go through the whole base game first? No. Like I just said, you only have to kill 2 bosses to get here, but if you make a fresh character and try to rush those 2 bosses, you'll have a hard enough time trying to beat them, let alone the DLC. I'm not your dad though, so you don't have to listen to me, which is why before we get started with the whole walkthrough, in this video I'll show you the steps you would take to get here as quickly as possible on a brand new playthrough. I want to emphasize though that doing this on a new character is insanity, so just use this as a skeleton for your actual path to the DLC. Pick up upgrades along the way, level your character, explore, etc. These are just the absolutely necessary steps to hit along the way. If you're coming back to an old character, you can absolutely still follow this guide, but most of these steps will probably be done already, honestly, and if not, it'll be really easy to figure out what you need to do to reach the 2 bosses required for DLC access. So, first things first, you want to talk to Varre right here when you get to Limgrave. To get to Mohg, you would normally have to go through a portal located in the very last region that you unlock in the game, Consecrated Snowfields, which requires beating most of the required boss fights in the base game, and that would take a while. But Varre's questline will give us an item that teleports us there much earlier. Again, if you're revisiting an old character, you probably have access to Consecrated Snowfields already, in which case you can ignore all this Varre stuff if you want to, and just use the portal there. Otherwise, let's keep going. Next, we'll need to obtain any Greatrune, and then speak to Enia for the first time at Roundtable Hold to get Varre to move on to his next location so he can keep doing his questline. The easiest option, and what I recommend, is Godric, who you'll find here in Stormveil Castle. Now Radahn will also give you a Greatrune, and you'll have to kill him anyway to get to the DLC, so if you're really committed to rushing through these steps, then I suppose you could go for Radahn first and just kill 2 birds with 1 stone. To challenge Radahn though, you'll need to trigger the Radahn Festival, which leads us to our next step. Unlocking any side of Grace in Altus Plateau is the easiest trigger for the Radahn Festival, but to get there quickly, we'll need to acquire a key. The first half of the key is here at Fort Height in Limgrave, and the second one is pretty far away in Dragon Barrow, but conveniently, we can teleport there with a portal just down the road from here. You can find the portal behind the Third Church of Marika, but make sure to grab the Flask of Wondrous Physic here on your way through. That will come in very handy later. Make your way over to Fort Faroth, where you'll find the other half of the Dectus Medallion. Now we can take that and run all the way to the farthest edge of Liurnia to find the Grand Lift of Dectus, hoist the medallion, and ride the lift up to Altus Plateau. Rest at the nearest side of Grace, and with that, the Radahn Festival will begin. If you don't do this, then Redmane Castle, where we actually fight Radahn, will be full of enemies, and even if you clear it all the way to the end, you won't be able to challenge Radahn at all, so you cannot skip this step. Next, you can head down to Redmane Castle, use the waygate at the foot of the bridge here, and you'll find yourself in Redmane Plaza. Speak to Jaren here for an introduction, and then head down the lift and through the waygate to challenge Radahn. Defeat Starscourge Radahn, and you're halfway there. Now then, on to Mohg. Whether you've already killed Godric, Renala, Rykard, or any number of Shardbearers already, you at least just killed Radahn, so you definitely have at least 1 Greatrune from him, which means you can now speak to Enia at Roundtable Hold. So go see her if you haven't already and interact with the 2 fingers nearby, and with that done, Varre will move on to Liurnia. You can find him here at the Rose Church, talk to him and tell him the 2 fingers didn't seem quite right. Next, he'll want you to spill some blood. You'll receive a few festering bloody fingers that you can use to invade other players if you want to go the PvP route. You'll need to perform 3 invasions by using these fingers, but you don't have to win any of them. After you invade 3 times, win or lose, speak to Varre again and you're good to continue. If you'd rather handle this step offline, you can travel to Writheblood Ruins in Altus Plateau and touch this red sign here to invade Magnus the Beastclaw. Kill him and it will satisfy your invasion requirements without you having to play online or do any PvP. Whichever route you choose, report back to Varre when you're done and he'll give you the Lord of Blood's favor and ask that you soak it in the blood of a maiden. You have several options for this step, but there are two that I recommend specifically. For one, you can either fight your way to the Church of Inhibition in Enia where you'll find one already dead maiden, or you can go to the 4 belfries and unlock the waygate labeled Precipice of Anticipation with an imbued sword key. There's an imbued sword key in the chest here at 4 belfries, so if you don't have one already, you have nothing to worry about. Take the waygate back to the place you started the game, kill the grafted scion if you died the first time you two met, and you'll find another already dead maiden here. I know this option sounds a bit more complicated, but honestly I think it's actually faster. As for the other two options, if you don't mind killing NPCs and ending their quest lines early, the quickest way would be to find Hyata or Irina and kill one of them. Hyata's first location is at lake-facing cliffs in Enia, so she's probably there if you haven't progressed your questline, and Irina is at the entrance to Weeping Peninsula. You'll have to kill them yourself for this to work. If they die on their own just by following their questline, that's not going to count, and obviously killing them early is going to end their respective questline early, which is why I usually just go for one of the first two options I explained. Whichever option you decide to go for, bring the blood-soaked favor back to Varre and talk to him until you receive the Pureblood Knight's medal. He says not to use it yet because the time isn't right, but you can just ignore that. There are actually no consequences for using right now or any other time. The Pureblood Knight's medal will teleport you to the base of Mohgwyn's palace, where you'll soon find Mohg. Before we fight him though, there's one more thing I would recommend at minimum to prepare yourself. This isn't explicitly required, but very highly recommended. Travel back to Altus Plateau and go to the Second Church of Marika, where you'll be invaded by an NPC called Eleonora, Violet Bloody Finger. Defeat her for the Purifying Crystal Tier, the sponsor of this video. When Mohg transitions to the second phase of his fight, he'll perform a ritual that triggers the blood loss effect on you 3 times in a row, dealing massive damage. If you mix the Purifying Crystal Tier into your Wondrous Physic, it'll prevent the blood loss, significantly reducing the amount of damage you take. You can heal through it, but Mohg is hard enough without having to waste multiple healing flasks every time he goes into a second phase. So once again, thank you to the Purifying Crystal Tier for sponsoring this video. Anyway, with that, all you have to do is climb to the top of Mohgwyn Palace to find Mohg, defeat him, and you should be standing right here, ready to enter the DLC. As I said in the introduction, I highly recommend playing through the entirety of the base game before you jump into the DLC, so if you want to see all these steps in the context of a full playthrough and how to get a character more than prepared for the DLC, you can also find a complete walkthrough of Elden Ring on this channel, which I will link in the description. And if you're just looking for a walkthrough for the DLC itself, like I said at the beginning, this is the beginning of that, so I will also link the next episode in the description.